It starts in the dark. Total absolute blackness. You're sitting in the theater, the lights are down, you've got your popcorn, and for a moment there's just nothing.
Nothing. No studio logo, no music.
No fanfare, no big establishing shot of New York City. Just a void. And then out of that void, you hear this voice. It's raspy, it's broken, It carries the weight of a whole life of disappointment. And it says 3 words that might just be the most ironic opening line in the entire history of cinema.
I believe in America.
It just sends a shiver down your spine, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Even now, 50 years later. And it's all about the context.
Exactly. Because you're not seeing a flag. You're not seeing the Statue of Liberty.
You're seeing nothing. And then, just painfully slow, we start to zoom out.
Yeah.
And we see a man's face, Amerigo Bonacera. And this shot, it holds for over 2 minutes.
Which is an eternity in film time. I mean, most modern movies are cutting every 3 seconds. This is the challenge. It's Coppola challenging the audience.
It is. He's saying, sit down, pay attention. We see Bonacera whispering into the ear of a man we can barely make out. A man who's just hidden in shadow.
A silhouette.
His hand is raised in this gesture that's, I don't know, is it a blessing? Is it a dismissal? It's so intimate, it's almost claustrophobic, and it just sets the hook immediately.
That visual context is the key to the whole film. It tells you right away that while the words say America, the reality is the void. The legitimate world, the courts, the police, the whole American dream thing, it has failed this man completely.
Right.
And because the light has failed him, he has come to the underworld. He's come to the shadows to find his justice. It lays out the central thesis before the title card even shows up.
So today, we're not just, doing another movie review. If you want to review, you can find that anywhere. We're doing something a little different. We're looking at a film that is, it's arguably the Bible of cinematic craft.
Well,
we're digging into this massive source. It's titled The Godfather, an exhaustive compendium of cinematic craft, production history, and narrative architecture.
And this document is fascinating because it frames the film not just as, a piece of entertainment, but as a bridge. It literally connects the old studio system of the Hollywood Golden Age.
The era of glitz and sound stages.
Yeah, it's a very controlled environment, and it connects it to the auteur-driven new Hollywood of the 1970s. It just changed the visual grammar of film, it reinvented acting, and maybe most disturbingly, it actually reshaped the self-image of the real American mafia.
So the mission for this deep dive is to really understand how a movie that, let's be honest, nobody really wanted to make.
No.
Starring actors the studio actively hated,
Yeah.
directed by a guy who was terrified of being fired every single day, became the template for the modern epic.
It's the ultimate story of art thriving in absolute chaos. It's about how all those constraints, the budget issues, the casting fights, even the mob threats, they actually forced the filmmakers to be more creative.
Okay, so let's set the stage. Let's unpack the state of the industry when this all started. Because I think it's easy for us to take for granted that The Godfather is a classic now. It feels inevitable, like it was always destined to be great.
But it was anything but.
In the early 1970s, the idea of making a big, serious gangster movie was considered commercial suicide, wasn't it?
It was a dead genre, completely dead. You have to remember, in the decades before, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s gangster films were B-movies.
Right, cops and robbers.
Exactly. They were moralistic tales where the bad guy always gets it in the end, crime doesn't pay, and the production values were, frankly, pretty low. They weren't cinema with a capital C. They were just popcorn fodder.
And Paramount Pictures, the studio that was behind this, they weren't exactly in a position to be taking big risks.
No, they were synonymous with failure at that moment. They were kind of the sick man of Hollywood. They'd had Love Story, which is this massive, massive hit, but pretty much everything else was tanking.
So they were desperate.
Desperate. They needed cash, and they needed it fast. So when they optioned Mario Puzo's novel, which, by the way, they got for a steal, something like $80,000 before the book just blew up and became a #1 bestseller, they weren't thinking, let's make high art.
What were they thinking?
They were thinking cheap exploitation. The original vision for The Godfather was a low-budget, kind of sleazy crime thriller, and, crucially, the executives wanted to set it in modern times, in the 1970s.
Wait, what? Why the 70s? The period setting, the post-war 1940s, is so crucial to the movie's whole atmosphere. It's what gives it that heavy, historical, almost mythic feel.
Money. Pure and simple. Period costumes cost money. Vintage cars, they cost money. Renting out entire blocks of New York and then dressing them up to look like 1945 costs a fortune. If you shoot it in 1972, you just point the camera at the street. The actors can wear their own clothes. It's a huge cost-saving measure.
That is just wild to imagine. Michael Corleone in bell-bottoms and wide lapels, driving a Ford Pinto.
It would have been a totally different film, just a quick cash grab. It probably would have been forgotten in, what, 2 years? It would have been Dirty Harry, but from the bad guy's perspective and without any of the style.
So how on earth did Francis Ford Coppola get involved? If the studio just wanted a quick, cheap hit, surely they would have gone for a seasoned pro, a director for hire.
Not even close. Coppola was way, way down the list. They offered it to pretty much everyone else first. Sergio Leone, you know, the spaghetti westerns guy, he turned it down to make Once Upon a Time in America. Peter Bogdanovich turned it down. Elia Kazan turned it down. Nobody wanted to touch a mafia movie.
Coppola was the backup to the backup.
He was the bottom of the barrel. And he was hired for 3 very specific reasons. 1, he was young, which meant the studio thought they could boss him around.
Control him.
2, he was cheap. And 3, he was Italian-American.
And that last part, the Italian-American part, that was strategic, wasn't it? It wasn't really about authenticity. It was more about PR.
100%. They were already getting a lot of heat from Italian-American groups who were worried about stereotypes. So the studio figured, hey, if we hire a guy whose last name ends in a vowel, we have a shield. We can say, look, it's one of your own making it.
It was cynical.
Deeply cynical. But the irony is, Coppola didn't even want to do it at first.
He hated the book.
He read Mario Puzo's novel and called it trashy.
And to be fair, if you go back and read the actual novel, The Godfather, there is some pretty weird stuff in there.
There is. It's a pulp novel. It's full of sensationalism. But Coppola, because he was basically broke and had debts to pay for his own production company, American Zoetrope, he took a second look.
He needed the money?
He needed the money. And he saw something underneath all the sleaze. He saw the potential to strip away the pulp and turn this into a family chronicle. He saw a metaphor for American capitalism. He realized he could tell the story of a king and his 3 sons, like Shakespeare.
So you have this director who thinks the source materials is trash, but sees a diamond in the rough. And then you have the studio who just wants a quick buck. That sets up what our source calls the battle for existence. And this war was fought primarily over the faces we see on screen.
The casting wars. This is the stuff of legend. The executives fought Coppola on almost every single decision. It wasn't a collaboration. It was a boxing match day in and day out.
Let's start with Michael Corleone. I mean, watching the film now, I cannot imagine anyone but Al Pacino in that role. His face is the movie. But the studio hated him.
Loathed him. You have to put yourself in their shoes in 1971. They wanted a star. They wanted Robert Redford. They wanted Ryan O'Neal, who was a huge star after Love Story. They even floated Warren Beatty.
They wanted a handsome, all-American leading man. Kennedy type.
Exactly. And Pacino was not that. He was a theater actor from New York. He was short. He was considered scruffy. And the executives kept using this word anemic. They thought he looked weak. They thought he looked like a nobody.
Anemic. That's a brutal critique for a guy who's supposed to become this terrifying mob boss.
They just didn't see the intensity. They saw a guy who didn't look like a traditional movie star. But Coppola, he was obsessed. He said Pacino had the map of Sicily on his face. He insisted that Michael had to look like he could genuinely be Vito's son. He needed that brooding, dark, ethnic quality. He didn't want a movie star. He wanted a real human being.
And Pacino was almost fired during production, right? It wasn't just in the audition phase. They wanted to sack him while they were actually shooting.
Multiple times, the executives were watching the dailies, the raw footage from each day's shoot, and they just found his performance boring.
Boring.
They kept asking Coppola, when is he going to do something? He's just standing there. Because in the beginning of the movie, Michael is passive. He's an observer. He's on the outside looking in.
So what saved him? What was the turning point?
The Saluzzo dinner scene? Coppola knew Pacino was on the chopping block. The studio was literally talking about recasting the role mid-shoot, which is insane.
Unheard of.
So Coppola rescheduled the entire filming schedule. He moved the dinner scene up. He knew he had to show the studio what Pacino was capable of.
That's the scene where Michael meets the drug dealer Saluzzo and the corrupt police captain McCluskey in that little Italian restaurant with the intention of killing them. It's the pivot point of the whole film.
It is. And think about the acting in that scene. It's not about shouting or big movements. It's all in the eyes. Michael is just sitting there listening to Sollozzo speak in Italian. The camera is just tight on Pacino's face. His eyes are darting back and forth. You can see the adrenaline hitting him. You can see him calculating, trying to remember what Sonny told him to do. You can almost hear his heart pounding.
And the sound design there is incredible, with the train screeching outside.
We'll get to the sound, but yes, it's all that internal pressure building and building. And then he stands up, pulls a gun, and bang! It's this sudden, shocking explosion of violence. When the executives saw that footage, the tension, the release, the sheer terror in his eyes afterwards, they finally got it.
They saw the bomb?
They realized his quietness wasn't weakness. It was a bomb waiting to go off. That scene saved his career.
Talk about high stakes. If he messes up that one scene, he's fired, and all of movie history is different. Now, okay, the fight for Vito Corleone, the Don himself, was even crazier. Marlon Brando is this icon now, but back then, he was box office poison.
He was untouchable, and not in a good way. He was known for being difficult on set, for causing huge delays, for being overweight, and his last few movies had completely flopped. The president of Paramount, Stanley Jaffet, famously said, "As long as I am president of this studio, Marlon Brando will not appear in this picture." He was emphatic. It was a non-starter.
So how did Coppola possibly pull it off?
His secret screen test. It's an amazing story. Coppola knew he couldn't just ask the studio to hire Brando. They'd laugh him out of the room. He had to show them. But he also knew Brando would never agree to an audition.
Too proud.
Way too proud. He wasn't going to read lines like some newcomer. It was a total catch-22.
So what did he do?
So Coppola went over to Brando's house on Mulholland Drive with a camera and a few props. He told Brando he just wanted to try some things out, just play around with the character on tape. He never used the word audition. And this is where the genius of the actor just takes over. Brando starts transforming right there in his own living room.
Ow. What did he do?
Well, he had long, kind of blondish hair at the time. He immediately tied it back. He said, "I want him to look like a bulldog." So he took tissues, literal Kleenex, and stuffed them into his cheeks to weigh down his jawline.
No way.
Then he grabs some shoe polish and greases back his hair to make it look dark and slick. And he starts mumbling, finding that raspy, weak voice. He just became the Don.
He literally built one of the most iconic characters in film history from household trash, Kleenex and shoe polish.
And when Coppola took that tape and showed it to the executives back at Paramount, they looked at the screen and their first question was, "Who is that?" They didn't even recognize him. The transformation was so complete, the sheer power of the performance was so undeniable that the studio head had to cave.
He had no choice.
He had no choice, though they did make Brando work for a much lower salary and put up $1 million bond in case he caused any delays. They made him pay for his own bad reputation in advance.
It's just incredible that the studio fought so hard against the two elements, Brando and Pacino, that ended up defining the entire movie. But the studio wasn't the only obstacle. We have to talk about the real mafia interference.
Oh, yeah. This is a layer of irony that you couldn't write in a script because it would feel too on the nose. The Italian-American Civil Rights League started protesting the film before they even shot a single frame.
They held rallies.
Huge rallies at Madison Square Garden. They claimed the movie was going to stereotype Italians and make them all look like criminals.
Which, to be fair to them, Hollywood had a pretty bad track record of doing just that.
That's true, but the massive irony here is that this so-called Civil Rights League was actually led by a man named Joe Colombo.
Who was the boss of the Colombo crime family.
The very same. So you have an active mob boss leading a protest against a movie about the mob, all while claiming the mob doesn't exist. It's just absurd theater. And they were threatening to shut down production. They were getting labor unions in New York to refuse to work on the film. They were making it impossible to get permits to shoot in the city.
So how did they solve it? Did they call the FBI?
No, the producer, a guy named Al Ruddy, did something much, much crazier. He went and met with Joe Colombo, he sat down with a mob boss in his office, and he cut a deal.
A treaty with the mob.
Basically. The production agreed to two things. One, they would donate the proceeds from the New York premiere to the League's hospital fund.
Yeah.
And two, they agreed to remove the words Mafia and Cosa Nostra from the script entirely.
Wow.
And if you watch the movie closely, you will never hear those words spoken, not once. In exchange, the labor strike stopped, the threats vanished, and the production could move forward.
And then it got even weirder, right? Because once they made peace, the actual mobsters started hanging around on set.
Yes. They loved the attention. They saw it as a validation. So you ended up with these real guys from the life standing in the background to scenes depicting the life. Lenny Montana, the guy who plays Luca Brasi, the huge, hulking enforcer who stumbles over his lines when he's thanking the Don at the wedding.
The guy who looks like a mountain.
That guy. He wasn't just an actor. He was a real enforcer and arsonist for the Colombo family.
Wait, really?
Yes. And that nervousness you see in the scene, that was 100% real. He was an actual mob enforcer who was absolutely terrified of acting opposite the legendary Marlon Brando. Coppola loved the clumsy authenticity of it and kept it in the film.
It completely blurs the line between fiction and reality.
In a way that gives the film this dangerous electric energy. You aren't just watching actors pretending to be tough guys. In some cases, you're watching real tough guys trying their best to be actors.
It's like the movie was being blessed by the very people it was exposing.
Or maybe the movie was creating a myth that the people it was exposing desperately wanted to live inside of.
Ooh, hold that thought. That's a great point, and we're absolutely going to come back to that idea of the myth later. But first, I want to move into the actual construction of the story, what the source calls the narrative architecture. We mentioned that Coppola and Puzo collaborated on the screenplay.
They did, and it was a masterclass in adaptation. Puzo provided that narrative skeleton, the plot, the characters, the sort of mythic feel of the Don. But Coppola brought the Italian-American authenticity and, crucially, the tragic structure.
They cut a lot from the book,
A
right?
huge amount, and thank goodness they did. If you've read the novel, you know there are these sprawling, really sensationalist subplots. There's a whole section about Sonny's mistress, Lucy Mancini. The book goes into very graphic detail about her. Let's just call them anatomical anomalies, and her subsequent reconstructive surgery in Las Vegas.
Yeah, that definitely feels like it belongs in a different movie, like a medical drama mixed with some weird soft-core porn.
Right. So Coppola wisely cut all that extraneous pulp. He focused the lens strictly on the Corleone family dynamics. His goal was to elevate the story into a classical tragedy. He wasn't thinking about other crime movies. He was thinking King Lear. He was thinking about the Borgias. He was aiming for high art.
One of the key themes they really developed was this idea of the Corleones not just as a criminal gang, but as a kind of corporation.
The capitalism metaphor. This is absolutely central to Coppola's vision. He saw the whole film as a metaphor for American capitalism. The family has a board of directors, the Capos. It has a CEO, the Don. When Michael says that famous line, "It's not personal, Sonny, it's strictly business," he is voicing the terrifying rationality behind their violence.
It makes them scary, but it also makes them strangely relatable to a modern audience. They aren't just chaotic thugs. They're organized businessmen protecting their interests and market share.
Exactly. The film argues that the distinction between legitimate business politicians, judges, studio heads, and illegitimate business is just a matter of social acceptance, not morality. The senator is corrupt. The Don is corrupt. What's the real difference? The film seems to be asking. What is the moral difference between the U.S. Army protecting American oil interests with guns and the Corleone family protecting their olive oil interests with guns?
Let's talk about the structure. The film doesn't move like a normal action movie. It starts with this massive 27-minute wedding sequence.
Which is an incredibly risky move. Most screenwriting books, especially back then, would tell you to get to the action. Start with a bang, get the plot moving in the first 10 minutes. But Coppola spends almost half an hour just hanging out at a party.
So why do that? What does that achieve, other than making me really hungry for cannoli?
It establishes the world. Before we see this family get attacked, we need to understand what it is that's being threatened. We see the whole hierarchy in action. We see the favors system people coming to the Don on his daughter's wedding day to ask for help because the legal system failed them.
And we see the duality of the Don himself.
Perfectly. Outside, in the bright sunlight, he's a warm, dancing father, taking pictures with his family, being goofy, but then he steps inside, into that dark office, and he becomes a cold, calculating judge ordering violence. It shows you everything you need to know about their world.
It's so immersive. By the time that wedding is over, you feel like you know these people. You understand the rhythm of their speech, the way they relate to one another. You feel like you're part of the family, like you were a guest at the wedding.
And notice the protagonist shift. The film starts with Vito as the absolute center of gravity. But the narrative arc, the journey, belongs entirely to Michael. And it's a complete inversion of the traditional hero's journey. Well, usually a hero hears a call to adventure, refuses it at first, and then goes on a journey to become a better, more complete person. Michael refuses the call. "It's my family, Kay, it's not me." But his journey is a descent. He goes from being a decorated civilian war hero to a monster. It is a tragedy in the purest, most classical Greek sense.
And the turning point is that Soloto murder we already talked about.
That's the midpoint climax. He enters that restaurant bathroom as a civilian, and he leaves as a killer. He drops the gun just as Clemenza told him to. He walks out. He has crossed a line that he can never, ever uncross. His old life is over in that moment.
Then he goes to Sicily. Some people argue that this part of the film drags a little. It slows the movie down right when the tension in New York is at its highest. But our source argues it's absolutely crucial.
It is essential. The Sicilian interlude is where Michael loses the last remnant of his soul. It's where his innocence is finally and completely stripped away. He falls in love with Apollonia, this innocent village girl. It's a pure, almost fairy tale romance.
She represents the life he could have had.
Exactly. The life he could have had if he stayed out of the family business. A simple, peaceful life. And then she is killed by a car bomb that was meant for him.
That's the lesson.
That's the lesson. It teaches him that there is no escape. The violence of his family, the violence of his name, it touches everything. Even the old country, even the most innocent people.
Right.
He realizes he can't run away. If he wants to survive, if he wants to protect his family, he has to become the Don. He has to become colder and more ruthless than all of his enemies. It hardens him into the ice-cold figure we see in the second half of the film.
Which leads directly to that incredible climax, the baptism.
Oh, it's one of the greatest editing sequences in the history of cinema. It brings every single thread together.
It's so jarring. You have the sacred Michael standing in a church, literally becoming a godfather to his sister's baby. You have the priest speaking in Latin. It's holy, it's serene. And at the same time, we're intercutting that with his hitmen preparing their weapons and carrying out these brutal assassinations all across the city.
It visualizes the profound hypocrisy of the mafia perfectly. The priest asks, "Do you renounce Satan and all his works?" And Michael, with this dead-eyed look, says, "I do renounce him," right as we cut to a shotgun blasting someone in an elevator.
Chills.
He is becoming the godfather in the religious sense and the criminal sense at the exact same moment. He is making a covenant with God and a covenant with the devil in the same breath.
I mean, it gives me chills just thinking about it. Now, that sequence and the whole film works so well because of how it looks. The lighting, the shadows, and that brings us to the visual language of the film. We absolutely have to talk about The Prince of Darkness.
Gordon Willis, the cinematographer, an absolute genius, and by all accounts, a notoriously difficult man to work with. He and Coppola fought constantly.
He sounds like he was a bit of a rebel.
He broke every single rule in the book. You have to understand, back in the 70s, comedies and dramas, they were usually lit high key. That means bright lighting. Shadows were filled in with extra light so you could always see the stars' faces clearly. The studio paid for Robert Redford's face. They damn well wanted to see it.
And Willis basically said, no thanks.
He went in the complete opposite direction. He insisted on underexposure. He wanted deep, impenetrable shadows. And he famously used top-down lighting, specifically on Marlon Brando, as Vito.
Why top-down? That creates those deep shadows right over the eyes. It's the one thing you're told not to do.
Exactly. He wanted to obscure his eyes. It created these dark, empty sockets. The philosophy behind it was, you don't need to see his eyes to know what he's thinking. It made Vito look like a skull. It made him inscrutable, powerful, ancient. If you can't see a man's eyes, you can't read him, you can't trust him, but you have to fear him.
It must have been a nightmare for the other actors.
Oh, absolutely. They had to hit their marks with pinpoint precision. If they stepped 6 inches out of that specific pool of light, they would vanish into total blackness. Willis wouldn't adjust the lights for them. They had to adjust their performance to the darkness. He forced them to act within his frame. It's an act of authorial control.
The film also has this very specific color palette. It feels hot. It feels old and heavy.
That's the amber aesthetic. Willis used this yellow-amber cast to create a period feel. It evokes the look of old, faded photographs or the stifling heat of a closed room with no air conditioning in the middle of a New York summer. It's so different from the cool, blue, sterile look of a lot of modern crime thrillers. It feels oppressive. It feels like history pressing down on you.
Okay, let's get a little technical for the camera nerds listening in. What kind of gear were they using to get this unique look?
They used a camera called the Mitchell BNCR. And the important thing to know about it is that it's a heavy, studio-bound beast. It is not designed for handheld run-and-gun work, and that physical limitation dictated the tableau style of the film.
Tableau, as in like a painting.
Exactly. The camera rarely moves. It sits there heavy and static, observing the ritual. It feels objective, almost like a judge watching the events unfold without comment. So when the camera does move, like when it slowly pushes in on Michael's face, it means something incredibly significant is happening. It gives the film this regal, almost operatic quality.
And the lenses they used.
Bausch and Lomb Super Balter lenses. They have a specific softness and a kind of flair that you just don't get with modern, super sharp, clinical digital lenses. And Willis favored the 40mm lens above all others.
Why the 40mm specifically?
Because it most closely mimics the natural human field of view.
Yeah.
It's not a distorted wide angle, and it's not a compressed telephoto lens. It grounds you, the viewer, in a very human perspective. It makes you feel like you were standing in the room watching these events unfold with your own two eyes. It removes that barrier between the audience and the screen.
That incredible attention to detail extends to the production design, too. I absolutely love the story about the oranges.
The oranges. This has become one of the most famous pieces of film trivia of all time.
Right. Everyone says, if you see an orange in The Godfather, someone is about to die.
And that is structurally true. Vito is buying oranges from the fruit stand when he's shot in the street. There is a bowl of oranges on the table at the big meeting of the 5 families before all hell breaks loose. Sonny drives past a Florida Oranges billboard right before he's ambushed and killed at the toll booth. But the origin of this symbol is purely practical.
It wasn't some deep symbolic plan from day one.
Not at all. The production designer, a genius named Dean Teveleris, was looking at the sets, and they were just brown, black, dark wood, dark suits. Visually, it was very monotonous, so he just needed a pop of color. He threw some bright oranges into the scenes to make the shot more visually interesting, because that bright orange contrasts so well with the dark, somber tones of everything else.
So it was just set dressing to liven things up.
Initially, yes, but as they continued filming, a pattern emerged. It evolved into this fatalistic symbol, this vibrant, natural life, the fruit of the earth appearing right before this unnatural, mechanical, brutal violence. It's a contrast between life and death. It's a great example of how you can read meaning into art that might have just started as a practical, on-the-fly solution.
It's amazing how these happy accidents become written into cinema history.
That's the magic of this specific production. They were making it up as they went along under immense pressure, and somehow, almost every mistake or improvisation turned into a stroke of genius.
We've talked a bit about the casting fights, but I really want to dig into the actual performances now, because this film really represents a shift in acting styles, doesn't it?
It's a passing of the torch. You have the classical generation, in a way, meeting the new method generation. Brando was, of course, the godfather of method acting back in the 50s, but here he's using these very specific, very technical tricks to build his character.
Like the voice we mentioned and the tissues. But there's also the cue cards thing. I heard Brando refuse to memorize his lines. At all.
That's absolutely right. He had his lines written on cue cards that were taped to lamps, taped to the wall, or in some cases, taped to the other actor's chest during a scene. Can you imagine trying to act a serious scene with Robert Duvall while reading your lines off his shirt?
That sounds incredibly lazy or just unprofessional.
It sounds that way, but Brando had a whole theory behind it. He argued that it was all about spontaneity. He said that in real life, when we speak, we don't know what we're going to say next. We search for words, we pause, we look away. By reading off the cards, he appeared to be searching for the thought in the moment, rather than just reciting a memorized speech he had practiced 100 times in his mirror.
It added a sense of gravitation to his performance. He's taking his time, choosing his words.
Exactly. It made the Don seem thoughtful, careful, and powerful. It slowed the rhythm of every scene down to his pace. Everyone had to wait for the king to speak.
And then, on the other side of the spectrum, you have Pacino. His performance is so internal. It's the complete opposite of Brando's external theatricality.
It's a performance of stillness. He does very little acting in the traditional sense in the first half of the film. He's just watching. He's observing. For me, the key moment that defines his entire character is the hospital scene.
Where he's protecting his father from the assassins.
Yes. He's standing outside the hospital with the baker, Enzo. They're pretending to be guards, waiting for the hitmen to arrive. Enzo is terrified. He's shaking like a leaf. He tries to light a cigarette, but his hands are trembling so much he can't even get the lighter to work.
And Michael takes the lighter.
Michael takes the lighter, he flicks it open, and his hand is rock steady, not a tremor.
Wow.
He looks at the flame, then he looks at his hand, and you can see the realization dawn in his eyes. I am not afraid. I am built for this world. He accepts his nature in that one silent moment. It's a chilling moment of self-discovery. He realizes he's a predator, not prey.
The ensemble cast, James Cabian as the hot-headed Sonny, Robert Duvall as the quiet Tom Hagen, John Cazale as the pathetic Fredo. They have this incredible chemistry. It feels like a real family. They interrupt each other, they touch each other's arms. How did Coppola build that dynamic?
He used this technique that I think is just brilliant. Before filming officially began, he held what he called the family dinner rehearsal. He made the main cast sit down in character and eat a real multi-course meal at a restaurant in character.
Like for hours, in character the whole time.
Full character, no scripts. He just let them improvise, eat real food, drink wine, argue, tell stories, talk over one another. And this process established the hierarchy in their relationships naturally. Sonny cut people off because he's the aggressive, impatient older brother. Fredo was ignored or talked down to. Tom Hagen was the calm one, trying to keep the peace.
So by the time the cameras rolled, they weren't acting the relationships, they were remembering them.
Exactly. It created that authentic, naturalistic rhythm of a real family that you see on screen. They had a shared history of breaking bread together. That's why that opening wedding scene feels so lived in. They aren't introducing themselves to each other. They already know exactly where they all sit at the table.
Let's talk about the violence. Because before The Godfather, movie violence was often, I don't know, it was cleaner, wasn't it?
It was very stylized.
Yeah.
Think of the old westerns or gangster movies. A guy gets shot, he clutches his chest, he falls over, maybe you see a little red spot on his shirt. It was bloodless, it was theatrical. Coppola wanted something that felt unglamorous, abrupt, and messy.
The term pink mist comes up in our source.
Yes. The special effects team, led by Dick Smith, developed a new way to show headshots. They used a mix of powder and liquid blood in the squibs. So when someone was shot, it created this fine mist that would hang in the air for a second. It wasn't just a red splotch on a wall, it was a visceral spray. It was shocking. It made you want to look away.
And Sonny's death at the toll booth, that wasn't just a shooting, that was an absolute annihilation.
It was inspired by the ending of Arthur Penn's Bonnie and Clyde, but they took it to a whole other level. They rigged James Killian's body and the car with over 140 squibs, those little explosive blood packs that are hidden under the clothes and on the set.
140, that sounds incredibly dangerous.
It was, but it was necessary for the story. It emphasized the pure rage of his enemies. They didn't just want to kill Sonny, they wanted to erase him. They wanted to destroy the body. It's a moment of total, shocking overkill that shows just how brutal this war has become. It's genuinely painful to watch.
And we have to address the horse head.
The most famous shock in the whole movie.
Was it a prop? Please tell me it was just a very convincing prop.
I wish I could. It was not a prop. It was a real horse head.
Oh, that is horrifying.
I bought it from a dog food factory in New Jersey. The production scouted a horse that was already scheduled to be put down for other reasons. And here's the kicker. John Marley, the actor who plays the movie producer Jack Woltz, was told to expect a prop. During all the rehearsals, they used a fake head.
So when the cameras rolled for the actual take,
When he pulled back those silk sheets and saw a real, bloody, severed horse head staring at him in his bed, that scream wasn't acting. That was genuine, primal terror.
that is effective, I guess, but it demonstrates the Corleone power perfectly. They can get into your secure mansion. They can get into your bedroom. They can find and destroy the one thing you love most in the world.
And they don't make idle threats. If they say they are going to do something, they do it. It shows that money and social status, like the producer has, cannot protect you from pure, primitive violence.
The sound design plays such a huge role in the atmosphere, too. We mentioned the train and the restaurant scene, but silence is also weaponized in this film.
The hospital sequence again. When Michael is walking through those empty, dark corridors, it's almost completely silent. Just the lonely click of his footsteps and the distant, mournful howling of the wind. It creates this nightmare atmosphere. It feels surreal, like you're in a horror movie, and it emphasizes his total isolation in that moment.
And, of course, the music. Ennio wrote a score.
The Godfather Waltz. That solitary, haunting trumpet. It doesn't say gangster action movie. It says old world tragedy. It sounds like a funeral dirge from a small village in Sicily. And then you have the beautiful love theme, Speak Softly Love, which provides this romantic, tragic counterpoint to all the brutality. It reminds us that these men love their families even as they're murdering other people's families. It complicates our feelings. It makes us feel sad for the monsters.
So the movie comes out in March of 1972. And it doesn't just do well, it explodes.
It was the first true modern blockbuster. It grossed nearly $290 million worldwide. And you have to remember, the budget was only about $6 million.
That is a staggering return on investment.
It saved Paramount Pictures from bankruptcy, and it proved that an adult drama, a film that was slow, dark, had subtitled sections, and was 3 hours long, could generate massive, massive profits. It completely changed the industry. Suddenly, studios were willing to fund these epic, director-driven visions that they would have been too scared to touch just a year earlier.
But the impact wasn't just financial. It had this bizarre, circular effect on the real world. We touched on it earlier, what our source calls the Godfather effect.
This is the circular influence. The film was based on the real mob, but then the real mob began to base itself on the film.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Phrases like, make him an offer he can't refuse, or the whole ritual of kissing the Don's ring as a sign of respect.
Wait, you're telling me mobsters didn't really kiss the ring before the movie?
Not really. That was largely an invention by Mario Puzo and the filmmakers to show the feudal, almost royal nature of the Don. But real mobsters saw it in the movie and thought, hey, that looks classy, that looks legitimate, that gives us gravitas. So they started doing it.
That is just bizarre.
Sammy, the Bull Gravano, the famous underboss of the Gambino family who later turned informant, actually talked about this. He said that when he saw the movie, he felt validated. He said the film made them feel honorable. Before the movie, they might have seen themselves as just thugs or criminals. After the movie, they saw themselves as men of honor, like Roman senators. It smoothed over the rough, ugly edges of their reality and replaced it with a myth they wanted to believe in.
That is terrifying. The power of cinema to literally rewrite reality.
It shows that we all crave a narrative. Even criminals want to be the tragic heroes of their own story, rather than just the bad guys.
How does The Godfather stand up against the other giants of the genre that came after it, like Goodfellas or The Sopranos?
It's a really interesting evolution. You can view Goodfellas as the anti-Godfather. Martin Scorsese wasn't interested in the kings and the courtly operatic atmosphere. Goodfellas is about the blue-collar soldiers on the street. It's fast, frantic, chaotic. It shows the messy, drug-fueled, paranoid reality that The Godfather mythologizes and makes look elegant. In Goodfellas, there is no honor. There's just greed and desperation.
And The Sopranos.
The Sopranos is a commentary on the complete decay of that myth. Tony Soprano lives in a world where The Godfather is just a movie that he and his guys watch on DVD. They quote it constantly. He longs for that strong, silent type from the old days like Vito Corleone, but he's stuck in modern-day New Jersey, dealing with strip malls, riot cases, and panic attacks in therapy. The romance is completely dead. He's living in the ruins of the temple that Coppola built.
So The Godfather stands alone as this moment of, I don't know, almost royalty?
It's the American epic. It's our Iliad.
So to wrap this all up, we have a desperate studio, a hungry young director, a difficult, genius cinematographer, and an unbankable star. And somehow, against all odds, they created perfection.
It was a perfect storm. It was a true lightning-in-a-bottle moment where artistic risk and commercial pressure collided to create something that, by all logic, should not exist.
And here is the final thought I want to leave you with. We spend the entire 3 hours of this movie rooting for Michael. We are captivated by the Corleones. But why? Why do we root for these murderers?
That is the ultimate question, isn't it?
The great film critic Roger Ebert pointed out that the film works so brilliantly because we are trapped inside the Corleone moral universe. We never see the victims. We don't see the drug addict dying in an alley from their product. We don't see the family of the shopkeeper whose legs are broken because he won't pay protection. We only see the royalty and their problems.
We are completely seduced by the power and the glamour.
Exactly. So the provocative question for you to think about is this. In a world where legitimate institutions sometimes fail us, where politics feels corrupt, where the law is slow and unjust, how seductive is the idea of a benevolent tyrant? How much do we, in some secret part of ourselves, want a Don Corleone who can snap his fingers and grant us justice, even if it means selling our soul to the darkness to get it?
That is a dangerous and fascinating question. It's just the line between the law-abiding citizen and the gangster is maybe a lot thinner than we like to think.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
A pleasure.
And remember, leave the gun, take the cannoli. We'll see you next time.